Welcome to Herschy and the Keegs Show, starring pitcher Mark Hirschman and his personal catcher, Mike Keegan. Every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. live from the Governor's Comedy Club radio studio. Thanks so much for listening.
A show about nothing. Two morons are talking. They both are really funny.
Good idea.
They just go with the flow. It's the Hershey and Keegs Show.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, do you feel that? It's Tuesday night, 9 p.m. I feel it.
Oh,
I
baby.
feel it all over my body.
Yeah.
It's Tuesday night, 9 p.m. That means it's the Hershey and the Keegs Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We love you guys. Mike Keegan, Mark Hirschman, Tony Walker. We're ready to party tonight, I think.
I'm ready to party if you're ready to party.
Yeah, we're going to have a party.
Yeah, let's do it, baby.
Yeah, let's do it.
We've,
real
we've
nice.
been partying. Basically, we haven't stopped partying since last Tuesday. We had the show, and then next thing you know, we're at Governor's Comedy Club together on Saturday night. And
Saturday night was great. Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank last week's guest, Nicky Smiggs. He was phenomenal.
Yes.
And he was headlining Governors this past weekend.
yes.
So we both did a couple of spots on the show.
So let's paint the picture. So the show happens. You're the feature act. Nicky Smiggs is the obviously the headliner. Mario Bosco is the host. And it had been expressed by you and Nicky Smiggs that hey Hirsch, why don't you come and hang out?
Yeah, of course.
Why don't you come hang out?
Come
Yeah.
hang out, have a little nosh in the green room, maybe.
A little nosh, a little Sprite, maybe.
Yeah.
But I know how it works. That I'm very fortunate that Mr. Jimmy Dolce, the owner of Governor's Comedy Club, is very fond of me apparently, and
You're beloved.
so I knew that I better come dressed the part. In case I get a hey, Mr. Hirschman, I'd like to see you up there for a few minutes.
You got to dress for the game.
And I dressed for the game, and he came in, and he was gracious as always. And obviously, he did what a good comedy club owner would do. He checked with the headliner first to make sure. And Nicky Smiggs was delighted to have me. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
So
who wouldn't be?
Right. Exactly. So we had the best time.
Such a fun time. My parents were in the audience.
Your parents were in the audience.
My buddy Alan Kennemer he was formerly of Cosentino Granite.
Right. No.
Who,
Yep.
He did my parents' kitchen.
He was recognized by a lot of people.
Yep.
Alan Kennemer.
Phenomenal guy. We're
Yeah.
doing a show for him next month. Every year he does a show for charity, and all the proceeds go to helping out less fortunate family. They've built like customized ramps for their houses if they're in wheelchairs.
Granite ramps.
Not granite ramps. That would be very slippery, I think. I don't know.
Marble ramps.
Marble ramps.
Okay.
I remember one year they customized a van for two kids that were in wheelchairs.
A marble van.
A marble van. And it was fully made of granite. The van. It didn't go very
Beautiful. Nice and heavy though. The kids were safe the whole time.
But they do great work. It's the Long Island Builders.
Okay.
And he was there. Not to go off on a tangent.
No, it didn't feel that way at all.
Not at all.
I felt like I was listening to myself for a while. I'm like, is this story going to ever end about the two kids in a granite van?
Yeah.
Okay, so we had a great time, and
Mario Bosco hosted.
Right, I knew that. Yes, Mario Bosco did, and he unfortunately did not get the name of our podcast correct. You had said to him, "Please don't say the name of our podcast because you're not going to say it right."
Yeah.
And the time that you said that to him, up until the time that he went to the stage, was about 2.5 seconds, and somehow he still managed to not get it correct.
I love Mario so much.
Yes,
but,
bless his little heart.
I think
little heart.
He fumbled the headliner's name too.
He might have, yeah. Yeah, he might have done that. But listen, it was a perfect night. It was a beautiful night. We
the best comedy club in all the land.
Listen,
I mean, we're fortunate to live 5 minutes away from an A comedy club.
It's really
an
a blessing.
A club not just for Long Island or New York, but for the
Just
country.
listen, when you look and you read these documentaries and these stories, and more often than not, someone's going to say, "Oh, I started out at at Governor's, or I
Yeah.
started out at Chuckles." So we're in that neck of the woods.
It was my
where-
Yankee Stadium growing up because I loved comedy
Yeah.
as a kid. And
Yeah.
I was 5 minutes away. I got to come here and see all my favorites. Dice, Robert Schimmel, Charlie Murphy.
Wow.
Some great shows when I was a kid.
Yeah, phenomenal. So we are blessed. I mean, I'm a mile away. You're 3 miles away,
Yeah.
and we don't take it lightly. So the fact that we had this room eating out of the palm of our hands on Saturday night.
I know.
Two buddies, 2 podcast hosts together, 2 lovers. I'm just kidding.
No,
We're not
he's not
podcast
kidding.
hosts. The fact that we were able to, we just, it was a little surreal, I think, and you know what's great about it? We're going to do it again, November 18th.
I think we are.
Yes, we
I think we
are.
are.
Oh, man.
I think tickets are still on sale, right? There's still
You
a
know
few
what?
seats left.
I checked with the club over the weekend, and there's only a few left at this point, so I don't know how that's going to go. Who's
Handful
going
of
to get them?
tickets left. You can get them right now at govs.com.
Yeah,
Don't miss out.
govs.com. Go to the Giggle Room link. The other show going on that night at 8 o'clock is Dom Irera, so don't make the mistake and buy tickets for one of the best comics in the history of stand-up comedy. Come see me, Mike, Carla Okerson, Jay Christopher, Tom McGuire,
Peter Hirsch.
right? Yeah, so it's going to be a great night. And you never know, maybe a little pop-in surprise. We don't know.
Could be Dom Herrera might stop in. Who
Yeah,
knows?
I don't know.
No, I don't know.
He's a little salty these days.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's gonna, but either way, we're gonna have a great time. Tonight we have a great guest. We're gonna get to him shortly. We have the Renaissance man, as he's known, Jeffrey Gurian, who is gonna be a wonderful guest. Such a wonderful pedigree that I think you guys are gonna really enjoy.
There are
enjoy
several
hearing.
faces of New York City comedy.
Yes, sir.
Jeffrey's one of them.
Yeah.
You see Jeff. I've seen Jeffrey. I've been with him at Dangerfields, and somebody reported that he was at the Comedy Cellar at the same exact
Same time.
I don't know how it works.
Same
but,
time.
But he's a mainstay in New York City
Yeah.
comedy.
Yeah.
And just a fascinating guy, and we're gonna have him on.
I'm
in just a couple
excited. You
minutes.
know, we talk about this, but we keep on bringing the goods every single week.
Whether it's just us doing our thing,
Just us or not just us.
or the guests, we get the best.
I mean, think
we
about
get the
it.
best guests. Nobody gets better guests than we do.
We've had Donald Trump's been here.
Yeah.
Professional athletes, TikTok impersonators, Instagrammers, WFAN personalities, retired baseball players. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Yep.
We're blessed. We're working
Chris
hard.
Monty.
Yeah, him too. Has been here. We've had the face of the New York Racing Association, Mr. Anthony Stabile's been here. Yeah. We've had the guy who basically, I would say, established Long Island podcasting in Anthony DiDomenico.
Absolutely.
Gave it its wings.
He gave it its wings.
So we're diverse. We bring in all walks of life, and tonight's going to be a really special one. We're going to pop him up in just a couple of minutes. Do we want to cover any housekeeping things first, or should we pop up Jeffrey and then
probably pop him up because rather discussing this weekend. I mean, we did that was the big thing of the weekend. I was here on Sunday after the night after we did that show. People were still talking about
the night before.
Yeah.
24 hours, a lot has happened. Yeah. Football games, yet they're still going back.
People still talking about the night
guys,
before.
Herschy and the Keegs were at last night with Nikki Smiggs.
Yeah.
So that's pretty special.
So there's a buzz,
but there's a buzz, and and good segue because there's a buzz right now. We're going to bring him on, the Renaissance man himself. We are honored to have him, Mr. Jeffrey Gurian. There he is. Oh, this is exciting.
Jeffrey, how are you? He'll be in just a second.
He's coming right on.
He's coming on.
We like to build the anticipation.
Yeah.
We like to build the level of excitement.
Yep.
We don't like an easy segue.
Yeah, exactly. No.
There he is.
I think it is. I think that maybe the battery in the mouse might have died.
No, there was actually a picture of him that I think Tony was clicking on, and then
no, that was him. That was on his end.
Okay.
That was on his end. He had it
Gotcha.
there, but he's
coming on shortly.
he's there. He's there.
Are you there, Jeffrey? Can you hear us?
Oh yeah, I didn't know you were talking about me. Yeah,
There you go.
We got nobody else to talk about. You were our guy tonight.
I was wondering who you were wondering about.
Jeffrey, thanks so much for joining us. Good to hear from you.
It's good to be on with you guys, but I can't see who it is. You're so far away. Who's who?
He's gonna go ahead. So you have
Mike right here.
that's Mike Keegan, or better known as the Keegs. I am Mark Hirschman, or Herschy for podcasting's sake. And I think you've actually had some dealings in the past with our producer, Mr. Tony Walker.
Sure.
I think
When I came out there, yeah, I did a couple of shows. I did Don Sill's podcast.
That's
correct.
And I performed a couple of times, so I met you guys, and Mike and I performed together at Dangerfields quite a bit.
Quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we do appreciate you coming on. Certainly, Mike and I are not just stand-up comics. We're not just podcasters, but we're lovers of the game. We're comedy historians, and we don't take it lightly that you agreed to come on our show. We know that you have an extensive history in this game, and we did a lot of research that we didn't know some things. I love the fact that we have heard many times that you're referred to as a Renaissance man. And it's true, because you do have your hands in so many different things. I'm going to rattle off a couple of titles that you were described at. I just want at first for you to give me a yes or no, okay? Simple as that. So is it correct to refer to you as a comedy writer? Is that correct?
Yes.
A performer,
Yes.
a director,
Yes.
a midwife,
A doula.
yeah, a doula. Okay, so you're not a doula. Okay, author, producer,
Yes.
radio personality,
Yes.
astronaut,
Not yet.
Not yet. There you go. Exactly.
and certainly for me, and Mike and I were talking about this before the show, but the fact that from a professional standpoint, you were a dentist. You were that your history was dental before any of this. Is that correct?
Well, that was a nasty rumor that was going around for a long time. And do you know when that rumor started?
Let's hear it.
The day I graduated from dental school. and it never let up. That rumor just follows me.
It sticks with you, right?
No, I was a cosmetic dentist, and I was a professor at NYU for 12 years in oral medicine and orofacial pain.
Wow.
That was my specialty.
Oh, very nice.
While I was writing for Rodney and Joan Rivers, and I always did both.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious to know the dynamics of how this got started. So similar, I'm a little Jewish kid that grew up that was born in Far Rockaway, Queens. You're a little Jewish kid from the Bronx. Was it always your dream to get into some sort of level of performance, or you, mom, and dad were like, no, this is going to be a dentist?
No, I came from the only Jewish family who didn't want their son to be a doctor. Like, no son of ours will be a doctor. Don't shame us that way.
There you go, right? Exactly.
And I'd be in my room studying, and my mother would be pounding on the door like, "Are you doing homework in there?" I'm like, "I swear I'm not. I'm writing jokes." No, the truth is that my grandfather owned a nightclub. My mother's father owned a nightclub in the Bronx, and it was a hot spot. It was a big hot spot in the Bronx called the Red Mill. And many years later, when I got to meet guys like Milton Berle, who became my sponsor in the Friars Club, he knew of the Red Mill. I don't remember if he had performed there, but he certainly knew it, and he knew of my grandfather. A lot of comedians used to perform there. It was a hangout for comedians and gangsters.
Nice.
And so my mother was very into show business. Growing up, all our family events were held at the Red Mill. And so I was always surrounded by that. And when I was 12 years old, I must have been a really weird kid, because most kids don't know what they want to be when they're 12. But for some reason, I felt like I had to make a decision. So I knew I wanted to be a doctor of some kind. And I knew I was too sensitive to handle life and death situations, because I was a really sensitive kid. And I was wearing braces at the time. And I said, you know what? This is great. I'll be a dentist, and I'll make people look beautiful. And I was already writing comedy at 12 years old. I was writing little things for the amusement of my friends. And it was very confusing to me. As a little kid like that, I remember thinking, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a dentist, and I want to write comedy. But who ever heard of such a thing? How can you do both? It's amazing that I was able to actually accomplish that. I could never make up my mind which one I wanted to do, and I wound up doing both.
So,
Which was
did
great
you reach
job.
did you reach a point in your career where you decided that you were going to spend more time on writing and performance and such as opposed to your dental career? Did that happen at some point?
No, I did teeth during the day and jokes at night. I was like, except when they would call me, like I was the head writer for the Friars Roast for 12 years, and sometimes they would call me at my dental office, and my nurse had strict instructions: never interrupt me when I'm with a patient unless it's for show business.
There you go.
So she would come in and she'd say, "Excuse me, Dr. Rivers is on the phone, or Dr. Lewis is calling," because Richard Lewis and I, or Jerry Lewis and I, worked together. And the only one nobody believed was Dr. Dangerfield. When he called, I just had to say, "Excuse me for a minute." And but I didn't really combine the two things. I had pictures on my wall of the comedians that I was working with at the time, and a bunch of TV shows came to my dental office to film me. I had a lot of coverage about my dual careers, but I was very serious in the office. I never joked around, and people would say, "Are you sure you're in comedy? Because you're very serious." Because I was doing very serious work. I was a cosmetic specialist, and I was changing people's smiles in one day, like 7 or 8 hours, working on people, doing cosmetic bonding. And I never wanted people to think that I wasn't taking my work seriously. So I was really pretty serious in the office. I established an atmosphere of humor, but I wasn't telling jokes to people, because I don't think doctors should be telling jokes. You know what I mean?
I agree. So
I think
both careers, though, you were making people's smiles better. So
Excuse me?
both careers, you were making people's smiles better.
Exactly. Well, Cindy Adams in the New York Post wrote about it, and she said she figured out the connection. She said that I make people laugh to see if they have any teeth missing.
There you go.
Yeah, I never realized it, but and I imagine that you've come across this man, a very good friend of mine and Mike's as well. Dr. Peter Bales has a similar story where he's always taught through all these years, and obviously, a very well respected comic on Long Island and the tri-state area. Do you know Dr. Bales?
I know his name because I did the book on the comic strip that Chris Rock wrote the introduction for.
Correct, yeah.
Peter Bales' name came up a lot when people talked about, Richie Tinkin, who unfortunately passed away a year ago in March, the owner of the strip. And when he used to talk about the early guys, Peter Bales' name would always come up. I didn't know he was a doctor.
No, he's not a doctor. He's a teacher. He's a professor. School. I'm just saying the fact that he has maintained these two very distinct careers all these years to this day. I believe Peter's probably in his 60s, and he's still a college professor, and he's still, a very busy working comic. So
that speaking of that book, it was called "Make 'Em Laugh." Was the book about the comedy club?
Yep.
The comic strip.
Comic strip. Yeah.
That was. As I was getting into comedy, I was still taking comedy classes. That was the book that I read, and it was the perfect timing. As I was getting into comedy, I read that, and I love the history of comedy. Such a good book. It's called "Make 'Em Laugh," and Jeffrey co-wrote it with Richie Tinkin, and Chris Rock wrote the introduction for it. It was great.
You know what? It was a labor of love, that book.
I'm sure.
In 2008, Gilbert Gottfried and I were at the strip. We were coaching Ann Curry, who was a news commentator, on how to do stand-up comedy. She had to do some kind of special thing for TV, and Gilbert and I were there, and Richie was there, and I was just looking at all the pictures on the wall, at all the stars that came out of that club, and I said to Richie, "Has anyone ever done a book on the club?" And he's like, "No, we should probably talk about that."
Yeah.
So he came to my house to interview me about it. And when he walked in, he looked at the pictures on my wall. He says, "I can't." He goes, "You have more pictures on your wall than I have in my club." He goes, "I think you're the guy to do the book." And that's how it came about. And I got to interview everybody. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld and Jim Gaffigan and Colin Quinn, who started out as a bartender there.
Yep.
Susie Essman, Lisa Lampanelli. Oh, I went out to L.A. to interview Billy Crystal at his office in Beverly Hills, and my first 3 interviews were at the Just for Laughs Festival with George Wallace, Larry Miller, and Paul Provenza were the first 3 people that I interviewed. And it took 4 years to do the book.
Wow.
It was 3 years of interviews. Well, even when these guys wanted to be interviewed, it was very hard to schedule them. Like, it took months to get Jerry Seinfeld to come in because his schedule was so crazy. And it literally took 3 years to do the interviews and 1 year to edit. And I wound up with 500 pages. And the editor only wanted 250.
Oh.
And that was a very difficult process. How do you leave out stories from Billy Crystal and Jerry Seinfeld and all? It was gold.
Absolutely.
I still have all of them in audio. And it would make a great, I don't even know if they do CDs anymore, but it would make a great audio project.
Some kind of audio book or something. That would be phenomenal.
Yeah, to have all of them telling their stories about the early days.
Jeffrey, you just brought up the name of a legendary comic that I think is underappreciated, and it's really been the first time in the 6 months we've been doing this show that I can tell my Larry Miller story. But you just mentioned Larry Miller. Larry Miller happens to be from Valley Stream, Long Island, just like I am, and he happened to grow up on Hungry Harbor Road in Valley Stream, and he lived in the house next door to my childhood best friend. And I would say like every 6 months or a year, I would see Larry Miller come into the house, and he'd wave at us. He was already a road comic, and he'd visit his parents in Valley Stream, and you know, the relationship wasn't more than, hey, Larry. We just knew he was like a road comic, and we thought it was cool. Wow. And one time, me and my childhood best friend, Howard Mofshin, we got locked out of the house on Hungry Harbor Road, and Larry Miller's mother brought us into the house, and she served us chicken noodle soup, and she let us watch tape of Larry Miller in California doing stand-up.
Really?
Yeah, so we're both graduates of Valley Stream South High School. Wow. He grew up on Hungry Harbor Road next to the Mofshin family, Howie, and his parents. And thank you for bringing up. Larry Miller is a terrific comic, a terrific guy. Been in many different movies.
Love Larry Miller.
Yeah. So, do you have
that's something my mom would do? Would force people to watch my videos.
Oh, but we were loving it. It was raining out. Howie forgot his keys. So I'm curious, and obviously we can't go ahead and cover every single name, otherwise we'll be here for 3 weeks. But do you know Larry Miller? Do you have a relationship? Give us a little inside dirt about Larry.
There's no inside dirt. He's a really sweet guy. The last time I spoke to him was when he had that terrible accident. You know,
right.
He fell and he needed brain surgery, I believe.
That's right.
That was quite a few years ago, and I understand he's recovering. I haven't spoken to him since. We were in touch quite a bit before. When he came to New York, he would contact me, and I'd go to see him perform. And he was always wonderful. You know, I love seeing very successful people because nobody knows how hard it is to make it in comedy. People in the outside world have no idea what it takes to make a name for yourself in comedy.
Absolutely.
And I'm actually involved in a new TV show that is going to be we're going to be filming a pilot very soon at a major club in New York, and it's going to show the public how hard it is to make it in comedy. That's one of the things. It's called The Raw Side of Comedy. And it's going to be a competition show, but / reality as well, following the comedians doing whatever they do during the day and interviewing their families and all. It's going to be a very interesting show to show the inside world of comedy and what it takes, how hard it is to make a name for yourself.
Wow, that's phenomenal for comics to watch, but I think people would relate to it now because there is like a little bit of a small little boom coming back to comedy, and civilians are starting to get into, you know, the how comedians are made now because there's so many different outlets for comedians now. And like, but they don't get it. Like my mother the other day when we were talking about Nicky Smiggs and he has viral videos on TikTok. She's like, "Why don't you just make a viral video?"
Yeah,
like it doesn't work like that.
Doesn't work that way. I'm glad, Jeffrey, that you brought up how difficult it is. And certainly, while Mike and I have achieved modest success, we get to perform here at Governor's, and we perform together Saturday night 8:00. That's a big spot. And Mike and I were just talking before the show how we don't take it lightly. We don't take it for granted. The fact that we had an opportunity to work at Governor's Comedy Club, the same place where Dice Clay has worked, and Jerry Seinfeld, and Eddie Murphy, and Charlie Murphy, and so many people. So the fact that you guys are going to bring this to light is really wonderful. When do you anticipate this pilot to get launched?
Well, we're hoping, I brought in a lot of talent. I'm the executive producer in New York. The rest of the team is from Philly. Okay. So just today, and I'm waiting for the okay on the location. That's why I'm not saying where it is yet.
Okay.
But it's going to be in a major comedy club in Manhattan. We'll be shooting from there. And I would say that it'll probably be in the next month or so.
Wow. Mazel, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm very excited. I was asked to write a show about the Borscht Belt. Like
Catskills, sure.
Yeah, like in the genre of Miss Maisel.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's going to be, if you like Maisel, you'll love this one. It's going to be very interesting. That one I can't talk about too much, but there's a lot going on, and I think the public has a real interest in comedy. After what we've all been through in the last 3 years, people need to laugh more than ever. And I just want to say, I'm glad you said that about performing at Governor's. It's an iconic place.
Yeah.
I really wish I could come out there more often. I've only performed there a couple of times, but it's a great place.
Yeah, Mark and I just started producing some shows for the podcast and stuff, so we'll get you out here.
We'd love to have you on, and we definitely, like I said, we're this podcast, while we have been extremely busy and we've had wonderful guests on, it's still very new, but we are going to include producing shows, like Mike said. So we would love to, we'll give you a few months in advance. We'll pick a day, and we'll have you come out and spend the night with us. That'll be great.
Absolutely, that would be so fun. And you mentioned Dice. Dice and I are friends for a very long time. And I have the honor, I'm one of the only people that ever wrote for Dice.
Oh, wow.
And he talks about it. A lot of comics don't talk about people who write for them, but he was kind enough. When somebody's very secure, they don't mind giving other people credit.
Yeah.
And he was doing Unmasked with Ron Bennington. And within that 1 hour on Unmasked, he shouted me out 3 times.
Wow.
Thanking me for writing for him, which was really amazing because he's such a huge star. One of the only people that ever filled stadiums,
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Dice, both Mike and I have had a chance to meet Dice because he's performed here over the years. He also happens to be very good friends with James Dolce, who's the owner of Governor's Comedy Club. So we both had a chance to meet him, and I've heard the same thing from him, where he will, without hesitation, give credit to people who maybe have not received the same level of accolades that he has over the years. So that's terrific. I mean, I imagine that you could fill probably 20 books on all the people that you've met. One of them that the Mike and I happen to be a super big fan of is the late Patrice O'Neill. Can you give Mike and I a little insight, and our listeners and our viewers, what your relationship was? I know you did a show with him several years ago. Give us a little info about Patrice.
Yeah. Again, when I talk about honors that I've had, to me, that was one of my greatest honors, that Patrice named me one of his co-hosts on the Black Phillip show, because he was with Dante Nero, and then he brought me on for the last several episodes. And Patrice and I had a very interesting relationship. Most comics were afraid of Patrice because a lot of guys, and this is a topic that we used to talk about on the show, men don't always treat each other well. We talked about how women have tremendous power and how men lose their own power trying to impress women. But men very often don't treat each other well, and they think they have to bust balls. They got to make fun of you. They got to do, instead of just greeting you, they got to slam you on the back, you know. There are some guys that have to punch you in the throat when they say hello. And with Patrice, he and I never had that kind of a relationship. For some reason, we just got along so well. We embraced each other from the moment that I met him. It was very interesting. And his wife even said that to me at his funeral.
Oh, jeez.
There was a private room for family, and I didn't go in there. I didn't want to impose. And when she came out, she walked down the aisle, and she came over, and she said, Patrice really loved you. And I'm like, that means so much to me. We just had this interesting relationship. And if you listen to some of the Black Phillip shows, you'll see the dynamic that we had, because I used to say to him, I could never say the things that he would say to women, and I would never want to. And he would say he could never say the things that I would say. So I used to bring models on the show, and I would warn them beforehand that Patrice is going to deconstruct you. He's going to try and take away your power. But all the girls that I brought on were very cool.
Yeah.
And we just had an amazing, amazing time. We would just hug when we saw each other. I used to tell him that he should hold me in his arms when we come out on stage, because he was so big, but he had a big heart, and I really loved the guy. I really did. We had such a great, I have a phone call. I wish I could play it for you. I don't know how. I keep it on my phone. The first show we did together, he left a message on my machine. In those days, we had answering machines, and he called me at 4:05 in the morning to tell me that he loved the show so much that he wanted to do a show just he and I. And he was so humble that he said in this phone call, he was so humble, he said, I don't want to assume anything, as if I might not want to do it with him. He said, they want me to do a show anyway, but a show with you and I would be so phenomenal. And then he just said, I know it's late, and I'm sorry I called so late. Call me tomorrow. And it was one of the saddest things, because he passed away, obviously, and we were never able to do that show.
Oh,
but
man.
just the fact that he wanted me to do it. I keep it on my phone all these years. And in 2019, one of the reasons, I write books on happiness. And one of the books that I wrote is called Fight the Fear, Overcoming Obstacles That Stand in Your Way. Because for some reason, I've been battling fear all my life. And fear is a bully, and it doesn't want you to accomplish anything. It tells you that you're not enough, that you can never achieve your goals, and it's bullshit. It's not real.
Yeah.
So I challenge myself on a daily basis, and I think we're going to talk about this later, but I stuttered very badly, and I had to cure myself of stuttering, and I had to conquer the fear of speaking to other people, because I realized that there was really nothing wrong with me. Anyway, I go to Japan by myself for 2 weeks with the little Japanese that I had learned, and I survived. I couldn't believe it. It's the most difficult country in the world to travel in.
I'm sure.
And I did 2 comedy shows while I was there.
Oh, wow, really?
So, yeah, I get off stage, and this Japanese dude comes over to me, and he goes, I am so excited. I never thought I would meet you. I'm a big fan from the Black Phillip show. And I'm like, that's crazy.
Wow.
That's insane. In Japan, they knew of the show.
That's
I said,
wild.
his name was Devin, and I said, we got to take a picture together. So I started collecting pictures, because wherever I go, guys stop me and tell me that they were fans of Black Phillip. And that was 2008 when we did that. So
Wow.
That's 14 years ago. I'm at Skankfest. 2 guys from Ireland came over to me. Big fans from Black Phillip. So I took pictures with all these guys. 2 brothers from Africa stopped me. And I'm not calling them brothers because they're black.
Brothers.
Right.
They were
Right.
biological
Mike would
brothers.
call them brothers. Yes.
Right. And they stopped me. They happened to be down near the Comedy Cellar. And they stopped me one night. They're like, Jeffrey Gurian. I'm like, yeah, who are you guys? And they said, we're fans of the Black Phillip show. I'm like, we got to take a picture. So I have this whole collection of pictures of fans of the Black Phillip show.
That's very cool.
So
It's a testament to the message that we put across
And
About-
Patrice was a genius. It's
about
just-
empowering men. Patrice was a comedy philosopher.
Yep, absolutely.
Just a comedian, I'm one of the few white guys that was ever honored for Black History Month. And that's the truth. It was me and Danny Simmons, and I was honored for creating comedy workshops for inner city kids. And Patrice came out, and Dante came out, and Kareth Foster, and all my friends, a lot of black comics came out to support at Hunter College. And it was just an amazing experience.
Very cool.
Jeffrey, I have a question about Patrice, and again, this is something that Mike and I talked about in our little daily pre-production meeting. We used to watch a lot of Patrice's videos, and he would frequently talk about not expecting to live long. He knew, obviously he had, I guess he was diabetic. How seriously did the people that loved him take that, did you think that his time on this earth was going to be as short as it was? Were you guys was absolutely startled, or you guys saw it coming? I mean, I'd love to know a little bit more about that.
It was pretty shocking when I found out. There were two different sides. Von said that he did take care of himself. She told me that she was always after him to eat healthier, to take care of himself, but a lot of it could have been genetic. I've met his sister and his mom, Georgia. Such nice people.
Yeah.
They thanked me for my support with Patrice. I have great pictures with his mom and his sister, and it came as a shock. I didn't expect it at all. I didn't think, we knew that there were problems, but I had no idea that it was going to be that soon. He was only 41 years old, and he stayed in that coma for about 6 weeks. And from what I understood, his mind was still functioning. His body couldn't move. He was paralyzed, but he knew that he was paralyzed because his brain was still working. Wow. And it must have been a torture, an absolute torture. So
especially for someone like him. It's incredible that some of the most incredible comics that we've ever seen, and I'm looking out in the hallway here in Governors, the hollowed hallway, and you see photos of Greg Giraldo and Patrice and Mike DeStefano. I mean, there's so many comics that I'm sure you've dealt with. Yeah, why the hell does that happen? Why do we lose these people so young? I mean, there's no answer, obviously, but
road life is tough also.
This past year we lost Gilbert and Bob Saget. Both of them were close friends of mine.
And Norm, yep.
Norm too. Norm I didn't really know. I met him once or twice, but Bob Saget I knew very well, and Gilbert and I were very close from the earliest days. There's a picture of me and Gilbert that I have. You wouldn't believe it if you saw him, with thick black curly hair. It's probably on the internet if you Google it.
Yeah.
Gilbert and Jeffrey, and it's like, my pictures go back more than 30 years. I was really blessed that I got to meet and work with the comedians from the golden age that I looked at as a little kid. I used to watch the Ed Sullivan Show, and when comedians would come on, I'd be so excited. And I got to work with those guys, Henny Youngman and Jackie Mason. Yeah. I got to write a movie for Jackie Mason, and it was amazing to me. Ron Bennington said, and again, I talk a lot about people, and I don't like to sound like I'm dropping names, but I was a regular with Ron Bennington for 2 years on Sirius XM.
Whatever you want to do.
Wow.
So it's interesting. I'm so excited about this Borscht Belt thing you're talking about. I told the story on the podcast recently that the way I fell in love with comedy was my late father used to show me tapes of Buddy Hackett when I was maybe 10 or 11 years old, and and to this day, Buddy was my inspiration for starting stand up. Look at this. We have Tony is posting a picture of you and Gilbert. Just hit the screen again.
Looks all right on the screen then?
Yeah, go a little bit closer. Actually, that's the picture you're talking about, Jeffrey.
I don't see anything. I just see his back, and I see you guys.
So there's a picture. He's in an orange shirt. You're in a blue shirt, and he's
That's my dancing. No, that's I'm dancing with him. That's from my Dancing with Comedians series.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
With my 80s porno mustache.
I love it. Yep.
The picture I'm talking about is even earlier than that.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah, Gilbert was a super sweet guy.
Have you ever thought about putting a picture book together? Who has this type of collection? Nobody really. I mean, it's phenomenal.
I don't think anybody does. Ron Bennington said that I'm the only person he knows that spans the generations, who knew the greats from yesteryear and is friends with the young guys from today, like Nick Kroll and John Mulaney, who had the open Broadway show for them.
I mean, for you to span Nick Kroll, John Mulaney, Tracy Morgan, Bill Burr, then you go back to the Freddie Romans and the Jackie Masons. It's really it's not
crazy.
Even believable.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy to me. I can't even imagine. When I look at the pictures on my wall, I got to write for Dick Shawn, if you remember Dick Shawn.
Yeah.
So many of the greats. I had a funny Buddy Hackett story.
Tell me, and Mike.
I was the main writer for the Friars Roast for 12 years, and Buddy was going to be the roast master. I don't remember who we were roasting. And the Friars Club said to me, here's Buddy's phone number. Call him up and offer your help, because when you're a roast master, you have to have a tremendous amount of material.
Yeah.
And so, and I told this story to Sandy Hackett, his son, and he loved it. I don't know why. It's a strange story. Anyway, I called Buddy at home, and I introduced myself, and I said, I'm calling on behalf of the Friars Club to offer my services. And he got very offended. He was very insulted that the Friars Club would think that he needed help. And I said, you know what? I didn't just call you on my own. I wouldn't get your phone number if they didn't give it to me.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he was very insulted. The day of the roast, I'm sitting at a table by myself, and I'm going over jokes and stuff. And he came over and he apologized. And he said, I'm sorry the way I acted that day. He goes, he was just in a bad mood. And we wound up taking pictures together, and we got to be friends after that. And Sandy was doing a show about his dad, and he wanted me to tell that story to him, and he recorded it so he could use it as part of the show. But that was my Buddy Hackett story. That I just happened to call him on a bad day.
Yeah, exactly.
Not everybody's in a great mood all the time. Even if you're a comedian, we still go through life.
Jeffrey, can I tell you a quick, very quick Sandy Hackett story, if you don't mind?
Sure, of course.
Actually, I told it on the podcast maybe a few weeks back, but I had just bought my house in Levittown. This is about 20 years ago, and we had a newborn at the time. Now my newborn's turning 20 in a couple of weeks, and my wife came downstairs. I was in the computer room, and on the crawl on the bottom of the TV or the computer, it said that comedian Sandy Hackett had died, and I immediately started crying, and like real crocodile tears. I was emotionally moved that Sandy Hackett, who had meant so much to me, and a couple days later, I got a hold of Sandy Hackett's email address, and I wrote a fairly long-winded email to Sandy, just basically saying, how much your dad meant to me, and I was watching him from the time I was a little kid, and eventually I became a stand-up because of my dad and because of his. And one day I was in my office at work, and the phone rang, and he said, "Hey, this is Sandy Hackett. I took down your number from the email, and I'm in Oregon right now, waiting to get on the plane. And I know you wanted to talk about my dad, so I have an hour." And he proceeded to just talk to me about his dad for about an hour and 15 minutes, and I can say blown away is how I was, and it doesn't properly describe what it felt to be talking to one of my idol's sons, who at the time he was doing the Whack Pack show the Rat Pack show in Vegas, and I'm sure you're familiar with that. Yeah, so
no, he and I talked about that show. Those are very special moments. It's the kind of thing that you don't forget. That's why I took a lot of pictures. I never collected an autograph in my life. I wasn't interested in that. But I was fascinated by the fact that I could meet these people that I idolized and wind up knowing them and working with them. And, like if you meet somebody and you're in a group of 10 people, there's a chance that they won't know who you are. They all say, they say hello to everybody, but there's 10 people there. So they're not really grasping you. But if you meet somebody one-on-one, they have to know you're there, unless they're insane.
Right.
They have to know that you're talking to them.
Right.
And
True.
at that moment, I would take a picture. Like when I first met Woody Allen, I was just a kid. I didn't have a camera in those days, and he read all my earliest material. When I was a kid, there were only 3 people that I ever wanted to meet as a kid: Woody Allen, Salvador Dali, and the Beach Boys.
wow.
And I met them all.
Really met them.
That's quite an eclectic mix you got there.
Sure was, and I got to meet Woody. I was still a junior in dental school, and he read my earliest material, and he inspired me to do films. And I wound up making films out of the material that I showed him for the Toyota Comedy Festival that aired at Caroline's Comedy Club, and it was called the Men Who series, about men who do very unusual things. So it was like men who take a pitchfork to the movies, men who enjoy Latin dancing with tools. Like I'm sure you've seen. I had a guy who did the tango with a wrench that was unbelievable. and I did one film. It was called Men Who Dance Where They're Not Supposed to. and
We've been there.
Yeah.
You'll never guess who starred in it.
Mike Keegan.
Peter Dinklage.
Oh,
Really?
Peter Dinklage. I've been mistaken for Peter Dinklage. That's
have
not
been.
that. Several people have stopped me thinking I was Peter Dinklage.
Peter Dinklage.
Yeah.
That was my first thought. But whoever thought he'd be the biggest star in the world?
The
Yeah,
biggest,
right. Exactly.
the biggest, littlest star in the world.
And I have him dancing in a no dancing zone.
Really? Oh, that's great.
My artist drew. He made a copy of a no parking sign, but this sign said no dancing Tuesdays and Thursdays or any other time. And we put it up on 28th Street and Broadway with no permission from the police. We were doing guerrilla filmmaking. So we pasted the sign up on this real, it was like a parking pole. And Peter gets arrested for dancing in a no dancing zone. and it was amazing. And he insisted that he needed to dance. He didn't care whether there was a sign there or not. But when we left, we forgot to take down the sign, and it caused a tremendous traffic pileup. And it wound up in the newspaper, and I was very scared that I was going to get in trouble, that they were going to say it was me, because drivers, it's hard to find a parking spot in Manhattan. And drivers would be pulling up, and they're seeing the sign says no dancing.
Yeah.
And it created a whole traffic problem. But I didn't get in trouble for it. It was okay.
That's just amazing. If you remember, maybe tomorrow or by the weekend, if you happen to come across that photo that you have with Buddy Hackett, I'd love to take a look at it. I'd love to see that. If you
Oh, sure, I have it on my wall. It's on my. If I don't have it in my computer, I'll scan it and send it to you.
Yeah, just even if you snap a pic on your phone and send it to me, I just love to see it. I love any type of thing like that with Buddy that I've never seen before. I mean, I watch all the Carson stuff. I watch the Atlantic City Caesar shows. Anything that I've ever been able to get my hands on for literally 40 years, I have as far as Buddy. But a picture with you and him obviously would be pretty special.
Yeah, I'll definitely send it to you. You'll give me your email when we're done.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and I'll text you after the show. I'll send you a message later on. That'll be wonderful.
But I have so much memorabilia. It's unbelievable to me.
I'm sure.
I have closets full of stuff from the early days and pictures that go back. When Milton Berle brought me into the Friars Club, it was in '85, and there's a picture of me and him at the L.A. Friars with his arm around me, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, they called him Mr. Television because people in this country bought televisions just to watch his show. In the 1940s, TV was new. A lot of people didn't own a television. And in Manhattan, they would have storefronts with clear windows, and they would stack TVs one on top of each other, and they were playing Texaco Star Theater, which was Milton Berle's show. And people would gather in the street to watch television through the window. And they bought TVs just to watch him, and that's how he got the nickname Mr. Television.
Oh wow,
that's amazing. I honestly, I don't know what I expected tonight, but you far exceeded, anything I could have dreamed of. And Mike brought it up. We would love to have you on when we produce another show. Probably after the new year, we'll be producing another one. Yeah. So we'd love to have you come out to Long Island. Perform on one of our shows, maybe even come in studio for an episode of Herschy and the Keegs. We're coming close to our closeout, so we're going to say goodbye and say thank you.
I feel like we're barely scratching the surface.
We haven't scratched anything.
Great stories.
I didn't get a chance to. What I'd like to do, I just want to show my happiness books.
Please, go ahead and do that. We're going to give you a chance to do that. Please do that.
Discuss your books before
I
we
wound
go.
up with 8 books, and now the last 3 are on happiness, and they're very important to me. They became bestsellers on Amazon. The first one is called Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, a spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness. And do you have any idea how hard it is to get a dog to sit in lotus position?
Mike does know how hard it is, sadly.
Impossible. But what that's about is, from the time we're children, we accumulate pain. Anytime someone ever hurts your feelings or breaks a promise to you or hurts you in some way, it stays lodged inside of you. If you were ever bullied as a child, or someone broke up with you in a relationship,
yes,
they stay inside of you, and I call them heart wounds. They're lodged in your heart chakra.
Wow.
So I spent 20 years on the board of an interesting group called the Association for Spirituality and Psychotherapy. And they were all classically trained psychotherapists except for me, and they accepted my work. and I wound up lecturing at energy psychology conferences to teach people how to think differently, which is how I cured myself of a severe stutter.
Wow.
I started stuttering when I was 6 or 7, and I stuttered through my 20s and beyond. Even after I was a doctor, I was still stuttering on certain words. And I realized one day that I didn't stutter when I was alone. I only stuttered when I was trying to talk to somebody else, which told me that you can't have a disability based on your location. A man with a limps in every room of his house. He can't go into a room alone and walk perfectly. But if I could speak fine when I was alone, it meant there was nothing wrong with me. And I worked on myself for years to learn to control my mind. This book is about learning to change your thoughts in order to achieve happiness, because it's there for all of us. After I recovered from COVID double pneumonia with the help of the comedy community, I wrote the book Fight the Fear, Overcoming Obstacles That Stand in Your Way.
That was one thing I was going to ask you, Jeffrey. Sorry to interrupt, but the happiness books and the traveling to Japan, I know you had a very, very tough, near fatal battle with COVID. Was that what really inspired you to write these books on happiness and take these trips?
Well, I wrote the Healing Your Heart book before that, but after COVID, I wrote my two most recent happiness books, Fight the Fear, and the newest one a few months ago is called Facing Adversity, Stories of Courage and Inspiration. And it's true stories that I've collected over 20 years of people who overcame unbelievable obstacles. And I'll give you two quick stories because I know you're in a hurry.
Sure.
But a little 3-year-old boy is playing hide and seek, and he sees there's a tractor running. He puts his hands in and it cuts off his hands. And his father happened to be a surgeon and saw this happen, but he wasn't that kind of a surgeon. He rushes the little boy to the hospital, and it's a holiday, and there are no transplant surgeons around. So the father, who's never done that kind of surgery, assembled a team of 9 people, and they worked on this little boy for hours, for 10 hours, and they reattached his hands, and they put them in casts. When they took off the casts in 3 months, the hands were alive, but they weren't functional. The grandfather was a martial arts master and trained this little boy every day growing up. And today, this little boy is a famous spinal surgeon, and he runs the spinal surgery clinic at a hospital in Colorado. That to me is the most amazing story. Unbelievable. Wow. And a man born with no arms and legs, Nick Vujicic. I've seen him on Oprah. He was thinking of committing suicide at 10 years old because he was bullied so badly. No arms and no legs. Today, he's an internationally known motivational speaker. He's married to a beautiful woman and has 4 children. And meanwhile, the singles bars are filled with tall, handsome guys with all their limbs. Yeah. And this man has become an icon to people. He's an emblem of what you can accomplish if you put your mind to it, because every person in the world is given obstacles. Everybody would change something about themselves if they could, but there are some things that you can't change. I was lucky that I got stuttering. That was something that I could conquer. And now, as an avocation, I work with stutterers all over the world on Skype, and I teach them how not to stutter, which is one of the most rewarding things for me. And so these books are all on Amazon, and they all became bestsellers. And it's the most important thing to me, because the world needs more positive energy, and that's always my goal, is to put positive energy out to the universe. And I appreciate you letting me talk about it. And if there's anybody out there who knows anybody who stutters, I built a website specifically for that, and it's StopStutteringNowGurian.com. StopStutteringNowGurian.com. And there's video testimonials from people who have stopped stuttering because I helped them. So I'm very grateful that you let me mention that at the end.
And not only that, Jeffrey, but we're going to actually tomorrow. Usually the day after our show, we reshare all the links, because not that many people watch it live as they do in general with podcasts. Right. They watch it the next day. But we will share the I have the JPEGs that you sent of the books. The stuttering thing is very personal to me, because my late dad was a stutterer. Lived to almost what?
That's why he was late.
That's why he was late.
I don't know.
What? He lived to almost 80 and he stuttered till the day that he passed. So one of the things I was super intrigued about, I had no idea that you had been a stutterer, nor did I know that you were so involved in helping people not stutter. So when we reshare the information tomorrow, we will reshare the books as well as all the information that you just gave us. So again, thank you.
You're very welcome. When your dad was growing up, they weren't telling people they can get better, and they still don't today. And that's one of the frustrating things. It's one of the reasons I appreciate being able to talk about it, because stutterers need to know that they can get better, and they're just telling them to accept it. And acceptance is for things you can't change, and that's why I wrote that last book. So after I recovered from COVID, the comedy community had a lot to do with it. I was hospitalized. I had COVID, double pneumonia. I got it in March of 2020 when it first came out.
Yep.
As you could tell, I'm a trendsetter. I didn't want to wait.
You got it right off the shelves.
Yep.
Brand new.
And I went up in the hospital, and it was crazy. And they gave me hydroxychloroquine, and that saved me. And I always like to say that because they politicized medicine, which was a very wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
They could have saved thousands of people.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
You're a wonderful guy. We are so happy that COVID did not take you. We can't wait to have you back on our show, and we will be in touch as far as you coming on one of our comedy shows and heading out to Long Island. And again, we can't thank you enough. We wish you well, stay healthy, and we will talk soon, okay?
Thanks, guys. Great to be on with you all.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. We really appreciate it.
All right. Okay,
be well.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Jeffrey Gurian,
that was
comedian,
awesome.
Actor, Renaissance man.
That was awesome.
Man
I am
of
stoked.
1,020 million stories.
I am so stoked. That was really awesome.
The guy has seen it all.
That was so cool.
Yeah, very cool guy.
I did. The stuttering thing is phenomenal. And what's interesting is usually when someone says that they have been healed from stuttering, you can still see when they talk that there's a little bit like they're getting caught on a word.
Yeah.
This guy speaks like a perfect orator, like he can do a public address or something.
Yeah,
so really impressive. My father, I can think of a million times where he'd be he'd ready to
really?
call me a little fucking bastard.
Yeah.
And like he wasn't constantly stuttering, but there were words that he always got caught on all the time. So that's fascinating. I don't think I mean, he sent this information about him. We both knew about him, and I still don't think I knew enough about him going into this.
Like I said, we probably barely scratched the surface of the stories that this guy has.
Yeah.
He's seen it all. He still sees it all. He's everywhere. Like any comedy happening in the city that's going on, he's there. Any new club opens, any special taping, he's there.
I want him on our show. I mean, again, we'll do it after the new year probably, but I'd like to have him in for we'll do another Herschy and the Keegs live
super
comedy
funny
show.
guy. I used to work Dangerfields with him all the time.
I can't wait. I'm so stoked. It's interesting. It just shows you where my mind is at and your mind is at. But when he was talking at Milton Berle,
all I want to do is bring up how big Milton Berle's dick was.
So,
right?
I don't know how many of our listeners know this, but and of course Mike and I are stupid morons. But Milton Berle was known to have a very large hammer. Let's put it that way. So when he kept on talking about Milton,
I didn't want to bring his stories to a screeching halt, but I'm just like, I had so many quips about Milton Berle's penis I was going to insert in there.
Listen, the truth is the majority of the guests that we've ever had, if we have a stupid thought in our brain, we're okay to say it.
Yeah.
I think early on in this interview, we realized that we couldn't be our usual stupid morons, which is okay because we're versatile.
Yeah.
And
because I'm a comedy nerd, I can listen to Jeffrey talk.
It definitely.
When I make my stupid Milton Berle schwanz jokes,
I wanted to make a big long hammer joke, but I was like, it's not the right moment. And the truth is, we wanna have credibility with someone like Jeffrey Gurian, honestly.
Exactly. But I love how on the same page we are.
Oh yeah, we're holding it in. I actually, if you watch back the tape tomorrow, you'll see that I was biting my lip and I was laughing a little bit because Milton Berle again was known to have a very lengthy ding-a-ling, Tony, as I'm sure I knew. So, but that's so funny, and that was better. You know,
when he was like, Milton Berle got me into the Friars Club. I'm like, will he push you in with his penis?
right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's
his penis arrived 20 minutes before you guys got there.
Uncle Milty.
Uncle Milty.
Yeah.
But that's why we're perfect together. I mean, we're both thinking
in every
the same
way.
Stupid shit to ruin a educational moment in comedy.
I mean, this is the guy. I'm gonna have him. I'm gonna email him later or tomorrow, and he's gonna send me a picture of him and Buddy Hackett. Like, I'm gonna be weeping that I just spoke to a guy who was friends with Buddy Hackett.
Friends with him. Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. That was awesome. Certainly. I hope that our listeners, our normal listeners and viewers, will appreciate when we do an episode like this. That's not the typical, bullshit back and forth where you're talking about masturbating on the couch when you were 13 with your boyfriend, or me talking about or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this, to us, when we started this endeavor going on 6-7 months, whatever it is, we wanted it to be a hodgepodge of things that we enjoyed. And the truth is,
Sports,
comedy, the history of comedy is so important to both of us. Mm-hmm. So freaking important to both of us. And the truth is, we could have gone on for 4, 5, 6 hours with this guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
funny, one thing when we mentioned Peter Bales, and our listeners know Peter Bales, he's been on the show, he's a good friend of ours. Mm-hmm. But that book that he wrote about the comic strip Make 'Em Laugh, one of the stories about Peter Bales was some comic talking about this comedian in L.A. that used to just get laid all the time, and they're like, his name was Peter Bales. I'm like, really?
Wait, is that true?
Yeah, that's true. If you read that book, there's
of a gun.
There's one little snippet where they're talking about this guy who was just this master swordsman.
Peter's obviously in his 60s, very handsome guy, and if you look back to the old pictures, in the 70s, he was too. Yeah. And you add in the combination of smart, funny, intelligent. I mean, hello.
Yeah, exactly.
So not you, Tony.
But
and it's funny also though. He was talking about people overcoming obstacles, and there was the man with 2 arms and no arms, no legs. Exactly. And like, of course, you're thinking about the joke that we told when we were kids. What do you call a guy no arm and no legs in the ocean? Bob. Yeah.
I can't believe that. I was seriously thinking of saying the same shit.
Terrible. It's just terrible. Shows you how
fucking
big pieces of shit we are.
Yeah.
But I did want to segue.
We're the same piece of shit.
It's awful. But I did want to segue, but he didn't leave a lot of, listen, he's got a lot of stuff to say, which is fine. I loved it. But he was talking about no arms, no legs, and I wanted to talk about our own Tony Walker overcoming the obstacle of missing one himself. Yeah. So, but I didn't get a chance to.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't overcome it. I still don't have it.
Yeah.
He didn't grow. Well, he's not a salamander.
No. You've overcome whatever hardship by losing it. You don't hop around. You generally you do fine, and I don't think most people even know. I mean, we tell everybody. Yeah. We tell everybody we can. Absolutely. Tony, he's got one leg.
I tell people that don't even know who we are or who the show is.
Yeah. You would assume that a man
I'll be standing online at the post office. Hey, this guy Tony.
But
Walker.
That's exactly right. But you think a man goes through life, with a prosthetic leg. No one really needs to know. So why do we need to just tell everybody?
Exactly.
Because we're stupid pieces of shit.
Schmucks.
I had other stuff to talk about just from the week and stuff. We'll wait for next week because we powered through an hour.
I hope he doesn't mind mention this. Did you know Peter Bales made out with Rosie O'Donnell in the 80s?
You know what? I think I knew that actually.
Did he? Yeah. Is she the reason that she converted over?
He said honestly, he said he wasn't joking around, but they were making out, and she's like, I think I'm going a different way. And I really I think he was serious. I think it was so funny. We were talking about it on Sunday here in the green room. And he's like,
that's amazing.
He's like, I kissed Rosie O'Donnell on her driveway. I'm like, is that what they called it in the 80s?
The old landing strip? The old landing. That's amazing.
But, yeah.
Peter's got some really good stories.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we had Peter in with Jackie Martling. We would never heard any of Peter's stories because Jackie didn't stop talking.
Word in edgewise. We should have Peter in just by himself.
You know
'cause he's
what?
another guy.
I would love to do that.
Yeah.
I would love to do that.
He's great.
Actually.
He's always asking us about the podcast. Let's have him.
Listen, you know I'm extremely fond of Peter. I love Peter Bales. So, all right, we're already like a little over an hour. So
Yeah.
let's be respectful of our audience and Tony. What do you want to plug before we head out? Anything?
The only thing I really want to plug is just 2 dates here at Governors. I'll be here November 5th here in the Giggle Room with Jeff Bodie, Rich Brosey, Rich Rita, these guys.
If you can get Jeff Bodie, it'll be a better show.
Jeff Bodie is so
Bosey.
much better.
No one gives a shit about that.
We've been trying. We've been trying to replace him.
You better be on the mic with that laugh, are you? You motherfucker. Tony hiding his goddamn laughter, this prick.
And then, of course, our show, November 18th.
Yeah,
Tickets
man.
on sale, govs.com, govs.com.
Yeah.
And those are the 2 shows to go to. You don't want to miss them. But especially ours. It's our first live show. We might do a little Q&A afterwards.
Yeah, we got to talk about that. We got to see. We got to see how we want to do that. We're excited. Thanks for being here, guys. We appreciate it. Please share the show. Even if you share one person, if you just share it with one person every week, that's going to help us grow this show. And if you love it as much as we do,
just donate 25 cents a week to
that's all.
Ethiopian.
But if you love this show as much as we do, you want to keep it going forever, keep on sharing, plugging it away. Thanks for listening. We will be back next Tuesday with, we don't know. We haven't really talked about it yet.
Peter Bales.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Who knows? All right. That's it. Anything else?
Thank you very much, guys. No, thank you so much for listening. And
we love you.
Share.
Thank you.
Love you. Bye.
Night.